What is happening, everybody, man? Thank you guys tuning in to another episode of the Agent to CEO podcast. And we have, we're in for a treat. I'm in for a treat. Selfishly looking forward to this conversation, being able to spend some time getting to know Scott and just where his head is and where he thinks and believes. It's a lot of what I was brought in when I got into this industry. It was like, this is how we do things, right? From the approach, the offer to the market, the direction and the things you take. And so there's a lot of like, I just start hearing you talk and I'm just like, that's right. That's right. So I'm super excited to dive in with you, and I appreciate you carving out the time and jumping in with us today, Scott.
Yes, sir. I always have time for you, John. Thanks so much for having me on. And yeah, let's get to it.
Let's get to it, man. So what was, I don't know if you and I got to even unpack this a little bit, but on, your journey, your path, we had a great conversation that night of watching the World Series game, and just kind of where the conversation went. It was a fantastic conversation, but I never really kind of connected the dots all the way to what was life right before real estate, what kind of got you on this path and led you, into this industry.
Yeah, so there's a whole podcast dedicated to my life before real estate, but I'll quickly say, I was fumbling around in life. I was selling advertising in the form of a phone book, so that was my my best and probably most successful job at the time. And I sold it to a real estate agent, and that real estate agent didn't want anything to do with the phone book. That he wanted Google AdWords, and the Yellow Pages phone book had landed the contract to sell Google AdWords in Canada. And I sold this agent. He's 25 years old, great guy, still friends with him. And he said to me, okay, let's throw $2,500 a month at it. And within a month, he said, my phone's ringing off the hook. Let's double the budget. And I was like, wow, 25 years old, spending $5,000 a month, just on this selective advertising campaign. And he was doing everything I told him to do. I said, buy these keywords, set it up this way, run your ad groups this way. And immediately the light bulb went on, and I was like, okay, I'm getting my real estate license. And very soon after, set up some microsites, and my phone started ringing. I remember I grabbed my best man at the time for my wedding. I grabbed him and I was like, look, Chris, my phone's ringing off the hook. I need some help. Like I just got my real estate license. I can't handle all the leads that are coming in. And, that was my sister's cousin, and it was her uncle, and so on and so forth. And we just kept on pulling everyone in my sphere into the real estate business because the phone was ringing off the hook. And that was basically because we were very early to the game in Google pay-per-click. And now it's completely saturated, and the lead gen is taking a nosedive based on competition. But that's how I got in. It's like sheer timing, and also just seeing what was working, and then just going in that direction, which is kind of an interesting topic we can get into later in the podcast, right? Like what is working right now, and then going in that direction. It's not pay-per-click anymore from my standpoint.
No, what's wild too, Scott, thinking about that, right? Because I remember early on when I got in, I came in, by default on the operational side. Kinder, the way I always like to say it, he was like a go fast boat motor on the back of a rowboat. Right. I mean, he was all gas, no brakes. And so there was no structure, there was no systems, and being able to come in and stabilize the ship because he had all the horsepower. And I remember early day conversations, one of kind of at the forefront. And I don't know if you've had the chance to meet Howard Tager, who has YLOPO, but he had Tiger Leads early on, which was really kind of the first online demand lead generation platforms before, they kind of paved the way before the boom towns, before the Commissions Inc. And so, Howard was kind of at the forefront of that. And he was the first one that I had ever heard that cashed out, right? He sold Tiger Leads, had a big payday, had a non-compete, and then got back in the game with YLOPO. And I just remember hearing the stories, of leads would come in and Kinder would print them out, and he'd just have a stack on his desk of the leads coming in. He would just hand those out. But it was funny. You talk about the phone book. I remember negotiating with the phone book reps on, how we want this, where we're going to be placed. Hey, we want to be above this person. Hey, we want this size. We want this size. Oh, what does it mean? Can we get the outside of the phone book, like negotiating all of those things. But I remember, to your point, right? Like with the pay-per-click and everything else coming in, that last time when we said no to the phone book, how hard they were negotiating with us. And, the year before we had bought the spine, and it was just like, we're looking at each other and we're like, are you serious? Like, you want us to pay that amount of money when, like, we trace everything. We have a trackable number. We had 0 phone calls.
Yeah.
All of our ads. We had 0 phone calls come from the spine. We had 0 business come from this, and yet you still want to push us down. It was interesting to see that transition happening, in real time, and being able to evaluate it.
Yeah, and you know what's so sad about the Yellow Pages phone book, and from my purview, is that they had all of the directory, they had the business information, they had the client information. I mean, if you think about it, before Google, before the internet, if you wanted, personal information, if you wanted business information, it was the search engine. There was no other search engine. If you wanted a plumber, if you wanted a realtor, if you wanted a dentist, you went to the phone book, and they basically gave that information to Google. So business directories, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, Google business listings. If you actually look at those are always distributed from Yellow Pages. That's where Google got their information. And the trade-off was, we'll let you sell Google pay-per-click as basically like a designated sales force for Google. But in return, we want all of that business directory information. And that's where the Google business listings came from. And they basically, they did this trade. It was obviously heavily weighted in the favor of Google. And Google went, thank you so much for all your information, but, published every business under the sun. And that's history. So it's interesting to see these paradigm shifts and who takes advantage of them. We're in one right now, as you know, with AI, and we'll see who takes advantage of that. But it was kind of an interesting ride early. And then basically it was, a very, very quick progression for me to get into real estate, because, selling the phone book or Yellow Pages online was a very, very fleeting business. I went bankrupt two months, about 6 months after I got into real estate. It was in receivership. So it was good timing for me.
Yeah. Wow. And so it was, for you, getting in and seeing that angle to be able to see kind of where the opportunity went. And I think you kind of saw that, obviously, that, in the phone book into the pay-per-click, to be able to see those things. Where I love is kind of where you look at the vehicle of real estate and what it's for. And I might have told you the story, but 21 years for me in the game, just last month. And I thought about a year ago, I did a 20-year thought exercise. I was like, hey, if I was, able to go back and coach, these two 27, 28-year-old knuckleheads, in Lawton, Oklahoma, that, are chasing, trying to make a name for themselves, essentially, is kind of what it was. And, having that chip on our shoulder, trying to prove ourselves, trying to prove something, trying to be worthy, and chasing number one, and doing everything that we could, because we were in such a low price point market that we had to flip houses. We had to, get into the construction game. We got into the development game. We were owning mortgage. We were owning title. Like, we had to do all of those things. But where we messed up was not looking at this as a vehicle, right, to fund our future and fund our freedom. We were thinking that, we got something that's going to be worth something someday. I wish, can go back and say, hey, listen, this ain't going to be worth anything, because we did sell it. And you would laugh if I told you what we sold the brokerage for. You'd be like, are you kidding me? You should have just kept it. Or you should have just shut it down. And so we were kind of going through those times, but I was looking back, Scott, and I was like, where we messed up is that we kept chasing status instead of utilizing this as a vehicle to build wealth and build freedom. And that was the first thing when I saw kind of what, the way you looked at things, the way you thought about it. I was like, if I could just sketch out the perfect way to think about this business, that's you. So talk to me how that mindset came to be and how you saw this as a vehicle for opportunity instead of something to build that's maybe going to be worth something someday.
Yeah. So, and I would say that, most of, and any success I've had in the business has directly come from mentors or other people that have influenced me. So, this already. Obviously our work with you is, we're just so grateful to you. So coaching, mentorship, like, we're huge proponents of it. I always will be. And that really is kind of the segue into my story. So there was a guy that I used to carry his golf bag at the golf club. We'll just call him John for now, but pretty I would say like established guy in the community, very well known, really, really high net worth guy. And when I got out of the golf course industry, it's another story. But when I got out of the golf course industry, he gave me the first house to sell. He said, he's a really dynamic personality. Scotty, I got $1 million house for you, and you're gonna sell it. Oh, okay, all right, John, sounds good, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you for getting me my start. And slowly but surely, he started to teach me his business. His background was accounting. He was a partner at Deloitte & Touche. He's a really smart guy. Bought and sold several accounting firms. And he said, Scotty, if you ever get $100,000, we're going to lend it out together. Okay, I got all kinds of opportunities. We're going to lend it out together. And sure enough, eventually I had $100,000, and I put it into hard money lending. You guys call it in the States hard money lending, and in the Canada side we call it private lending. And I put it out, and at the time it was 8%. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to make $8,000 on this money in a year, but I'm going to have basically not worked for that income. And that was very, very early in my real estate career. And I became almost addicted, if you will. I say fascinated is probably the softer word, but like really, really fascinated with how to make money work for you as opposed to just running on the treadmill. I was running on the treadmill hard. I was doing 100 deals a year myself. I'd started a small team, but I kind of admired this guy, John, because he was, 70 years old at the time, and he loved life. He loved going around checking out properties. He was kind of underwriting his own deals and looking at the house before he lent on it, or looking at the commercial building before he lent on it. And so I admired him, and I just kept on like becoming more addicted to like putting money in the bank so that I could continue to lend it out. And every time I would get more money in, or the loan would get discharged, I would roll it into another loan, and I'd roll it into another loan. And surely, 100,000 turned into 200, 300, 400. And all of a sudden it was like, whoa, I've got some real money out on the street now. And thankfully, even including this year, I've never lost a dime in hard money lending. Had some loans go sideways for a time, but always paid up, and all the compounding interest that was owed was paid in the end. So it's become, for me, a way to look at our industry, and not just from a hard money lending standpoint, but like, how can I actually create wealth being the quarterback of somebody's major move? Because when you are quarterbacking, football team, to use the analogy, like, exactly who's running which route, where to get that ball. Is it a handoff? Is it a pass option? Are you going to run it yourself? And you basically have a lot of control in that game. And as a realtor, you are quarterbacking someone's largest move. I mean, you're telling them where to go for, who do they need for renovations? Who do they need for their lawyer? Where should they go for title? Who do they need for their mortgage? Who should they use as a painter, et cetera, et cetera. And what I realized was, if you can get on the right side of being a quarterback and not just a realtor, you can get involved in a lot of those steps. And then you can look at the overall game and decide, what plays you want to run, et cetera. And I truly believe this needs to be said. If you come at it from a looking after your client's needs first, you can get involved in that play and be very successful together. So I think a lot of people in our industry, they look at it from like, how can I get in on this and make more money for me? I think that's the wrong perspective. I think the right perspective is, what is right for my client? What is the best opportunity for them? And how can I align with them, or maybe step out of the way? Maybe just push them in that direction and you step out of the way. But more times than not, if they feel that trust, if they feel that you have their back, they want you on that ride. They're going to bring you into that. And so anyways, we'll dive into it. But I would say, for me, it's a very holistic approach to real estate. I do not want to become somebody who is selling commission retail at the end of the day, and that's my sole source of income. And so for us, we've decided to diversify and look after our team for wealth building opportunities, look after our partnerships, and we want to flush them out. We want to flush out every opportunity.
Scott, how come, like everything you're saying, like at my core, like I know it's right. And everything that I've been able to see over, the last, 20 years of this game and the roller coasters, and especially here in the States, right, going through 7, 8, 9, and just the navigating of the terrain. How come, like, what you're saying is so spot on, so right? How come that for agents to be thinking about their business? I mean, that, like, very, very seldom. You have to get in the right rooms to be able to hear these type of conversations. How come this conversation isn't leading the way for the industry?
Yeah. And I don't know that I have the right answer, but I'll give you my perspective on it. I think one thing is very true. I think a lot of realtors can be can be poor managers of their own finances. So it is an industry where we're running hard, we're playing hard, you're driving fancy cars, you're taking nice vacations, etc. For me, I'll just speak personally. I started to make decent money, seven-figure money, at around 31 years old. And that's for me, that's a young age to be making that kind of an income. I didn't go buy, Ferraris and start flying private or buying bigger and bigger houses. I was very, very conservative in nature. And it was actually a Keller Williams saying, and it probably came from the top, but they would always say, lead with revenue, lead with revenue. And I remember that very early in my journey being like, okay, I'm just gonna lead with revenue. And the thing is why I love hard money lending or private lending specifically, and we'll go into other branches of income that we generate, but why I like that specifically is it takes the money out of your hand. I was somebody that would get very, very nervous is the wrong word, but I would get very eager to get money out of my bank account. So I hate having money in my bank account, even till today, even to this day. If I've got a couple $100,000 in the bank account, it's like, where can I get this out into the market to make money? And so I just kind of kept on going in that runway, and it's been very, very profitable. The other thing I'll tell you is you end up picking up assets along the way if you're strategic that are phenomenal assets. That guy John that I was telling you about 2 years ago. So in Canada they came in with this thing where they were going to now tax a higher degree of capital gains. So they were taxing it at 25%. They're going to up it to like 45%. And it was like June 2025, they were going to tax the capital gains, an extra, whatever it was, 15%. And he had done this loan for $1 million when I first got to know him. And it was on this commercial building. And the commercial building just happened to be set in Oakville, Ontario. Is basically like the Greenwich Village of New York. Very, very boutique, very expensive. And this was right at the kind of intersection that you'd want to be at. And it was this massive 120,000 square foot building. He lent that guy $1 million at the time, which was fair market value. Defaults on the loan, picks up the asset because selling it wouldn't have covered his loan anyways. And he sold that building just before that extra tax kicked in strategically, because he's a really smart guy. He sells it for $43 million. And I go, wow. And we're talking about 10 years. We went from $1 million to $43 million. And I go, wow, like what an unbelievable one win. Yeah. But it was because he was on the forefront of opportunities. He was always engaged in the community. I digress for 1 second. I wanted to say something before I forget. 2 things in business that I really hold on to dearly. 1, you have to be good at what you do. 2, people have to know who you are. You have to be good at what you do. People have to know who you are. You can be great at what you do, but if nobody knows who you are, good luck to you. Or everyone can know who you are, but if you're not great at what you do, good luck to you. John was great at what he did, and people always knew who he was. So if there was an opportunity, let's call John. He's great at getting the deal done. He's good at strategically thinking about things. And so for me, that's just something I've carried into my business is I'm always looking for opportunities. I always want to get money out, whether it be a loan or whether it be an asset that I want to pick up, might be a partnership that I want to do, a business that I'm interested in. Recently, just don't want to go too far off the page here, but recently I've been using AI to invest in the stock market. I've always been a terrible stock picker, terrible. But I thought to myself, if I could have Warren Buffett, on my shoulder advising me what stocks to buy and sell and when to buy and sell them, I would use that. I would use that leverage. But ChatGPT is smarter than Warren Buffett. So why wouldn't I use that as leverage? This is how I think about business. And I see real estate as the constant engine that's producing the income that I can then send out and build wealth with. That's where I'm at.
It's wild. You're talking about that. And I don't know how much down the rabbit hole you go with like the PBD podcast and Bet David and Tom on there in July. I forget, it was Robinhood or something, whatever one of the things he put in, and then there was an AI, one of the platforms that he went through and said, I want to invest in everything that Nancy Pelosi has.
Yeah.
And the return on his money since July is like, it outpaces anything Warren Buffett has ever done in his entire career. Yeah. Obviously the Nancy Pelosi plan, but being able to quickly do that with AI, to be able to plug that in, it's fascinating, right? To be able to do that.
And John, that's what I love about your podcast is like you're actually here to be a resource for agents to build wealth. Like this is not just talking about like what's your closing technique, what's your best lead strategy, but like how can I support you guys actually build wealth, become business-minded people as opposed to just realtors. And I love that about you. And what I will say is, this might be a gambler's tale, but I started investing in June of this year. Maybe it was May, but I think it was early June. I say could be a gambler's tale, up 173% of my portfolio.
Mm.
And I put in some real money, I put in some real money in there, and it's like, wow. And I'm just doing what ChatGPT is telling me to do. It's like, well, you should trim this, sell that. I think you should pick it up at this price. Okay, I do it. And every day I put in the same 13 prompts into ChatGPT. And sure enough, and to get back to Nancy Pelosi, so that, the Pelosi tracker, you ever heard of this? So there's an
Yeah.
actual Pelosi tracker, right? And you can literally go in and follow every single trade she makes. So the resources are there, and I think that the opportunities are there, but you have to use the resources. We can't just, be hearers. We have to be doers. And this is me. I've got probably decent risk tolerance, which has helped me as well. So I am somebody that will jump into the water before I know the temperature, but calculated jumps, but there's still risk there.
What do you think your take? I mean, obviously from your perspective, there's a great somebody shared it with me a couple months ago that procrastination is just a direct indication to a lack of clarity, and I really like that, right? Because a lot of the things where a lot of my conversations start with clients is, we got to get clear. Where are you at? Where do you want to go? What's the goal? What are we working towards? What's the destination? And so I think a lot of people get paralyzed, but kind of in your take and your perspective and all the agents and everybody you've worked with, I mean, what's the reason that they just keep chasing transactions and they don't, try to stack a little money and then get their money working for them?
Yeah, I really believe that the true reason for that is most agents are spending what they're making. So I think that they would do all of the opportunities that came in front of them, but they are literally like, if they make $100,000 in a month, they're spending $100,000 a month. If they're making $100,000 in a year, they're spending $100,000 in a year. And I really feel like it's very difficult, especially now with the economy and, price of everything. If you have children or dependents that you're supporting, like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's easy to put money away. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that when you get addicted to watching compound money grow, it's a fascinating vehicle. I put in, I do this a lot with my friends. I'll say, you pick the number, you pick whatever number you want. Let's put it into ChatGPT, and let's just say, if you had $100,000 and it compounded, you pick the interest rate, and they'll usually say 10%, and it compounds at 10%, which is the average rate of return for the S&P 500, right? So if you just took money and stuck it into the S&P 500, you're going to make 10% per year on average since the history of the S&P 500. So I'll say, okay, what do you think that's going to become in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, if you don't pull it out? And the number is astronomical.
Mm-hmm.
Astronomical. I said to my wife the other day, because, sometimes our partners can get a little bit nervous. Realtors don't make consistent income, and they feel that, right? They can feel when like the markets are great and we're, all right, let's go to dinner again, honey. You want a new car? Let's go get a new car. They can feel that. And they can also feel like, okay, listen, why did you just order Uber Eats? They jack up the price of that food. Like, you got to really let's temper our spending here. And all that to say, every once in a while, I'll walk her through our net worth statement, and I will show her, if this grows at 10% per year, which I'm confident I can grow it at, this is what you're going to have in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. If I die, or when I die, know that this is growing without us doing anything. And that is where I think agents, they have to get on the right side of that. And then as soon as they see it, I don't care if it's like $5,000 went to $6,000. When you see that and it clicks, and you did not have to the lockbox is jammed, I got to go fix the lockbox, and my sign guy's on vacation, so I got to go put up the sold sign, or I got to go take it down, or there's new feature sheets they didn't want digital feature sheets, I got to go print them out for this guy. When you didn't have to do any of that, which is all the stuff we hate doing. We love selling the house. We love negotiating. We probably love the relationship with the client, but it's all those minutia details that bog us down. And you didn't do any of that. And 5,000 went to 6,000, or 100,000 went to 120,000. I just became completely addicted to watching it grow. And now I will do whatever I can to learn and figure out ways of diversifying, but also creating that, I would say it's passive. passive is a very, very delicate word because, as you know, with rev share and everything else in our industry, it's not completely passive, but most of these income streams are very passive in comparison. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely it's the same thing, right? Being one of the rev share models, and all of a sudden you got a little bit of extra money showing up in your bank account and you're like, where did that come from? Right. Oh, wow. That just took care of my cell phone bill.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That just took care of my car payment. Oh, snap. That took care of my mortgage. So like, those things that becomes addictive too. Right. So even the same thing, like what you're talking about on the compounding, I want to kind of step back in, because one of the things that I really admire about the way you think and the way you look at things, not only the way that you know how to make money grow, but also you bring in another element. And maybe this was kind of in because you had the sales, and there's very few people that I know that I can say are top of the top shelf when it comes to sales, but also top shelf when it comes to marketing, and like being able to push people out of their comfort zones, like what you did with the merger, with the other two partners coming in that are typically weren't comfortable with this, but I saw it, right? And I remember, the sideline conversation with Steve, and I was like, Scott's right. I said, listen, I said, and it's not only just trust the process, I said, but have faith in the process, because what he's talking about, I'm telling you, I know at every ounce of my being, I know it's right. I know it's right. You just got like have faith. And so being able to have that, not only the risk with money in return and investments and assets, but and I think I know what's right, Scott, because this, all the years spent, you talk about mentors, all the years like working with Jay Abraham and just really learning this from him at a fundamental level. But he's like, listen, he said, there's nothing that can get you a greater return than investing in your business. So, Jay's always been business, business, business. And so you take the money from the business and fuel assets and wealth building, but you are not afraid to dump the money. And I remember the conversation, and I smiled because I was like, I would sign up for that. You said, guys, what if we got $1 million? And that's why I was like, and I told Steve, I said, I would sign up for it. I said, because he's right. He's right. He has the right message to the market match. But talk to us a little bit, like, where did that come from? Being able to know that you can, marketing, call to action, you can make a compelling offer to the market, cash conversion cycle, it's going to pay a return. We're going to flip that money. We're going to stack the money, and then we'll reinvest the money on the marketing side of things.
Yeah. So, and I think to give your audience kind of a background is just to give a little bit of a background on Steve and Ryan's personalities and also their business models when I came into the picture. So, so you have Ryan, who is the owner of the crew, heavy culture, pretty much the most likable guy in the room, in every room, just heavy culture guy. You have Steve, who's incredibly operationally sound. Like we're talking about spreadsheets and, generating his own software. Like he's really operationally sound, but either of them would spend very, very minimally on advertising. And then you've got myself, who's operationally, very, very distracted and culturally not present from a big culture perspective, but high risk tolerance and high lead gen model, big spray and pray style advertising, billboards, buses, flyers, Google campaigns, social media spend, etc. And we bring these three personalities together, and I'm going, okay, guys, let's take $1 million and let's throw it out into the marketplace. And I actually joked with you, John, and I said, if you look at most panels, what they don't say, they'll tell you about, we were really strategic in this mode, or we bought this software and we did that. But by the end of the day, someone took a lot of money and someone, sprayed it out in the marketplace. If you look at big agents or teams in our marketplace, like there's a lot of spend backing what they're saying. Yeah. And these guys were at first, like, they're like, well, I don't know about that. And there was, for the first quarter of our partnership, they were literally like, they were sitting on my hands. Like they would not let me touch the money button. And eventually it was like, okay, let's try it. And then, as you know, here we are today. And I think we generated 158. We'll talk to Steve about that. 158 listing appointments in 20 days. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? If we had 158 listing appointments in a year, we'd have been thrilled. And in this marketplace, and it's like, wow, no, that costs hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think we have 300 ad spaces out there between all the billboards and buses. And then I think we dumped 600,000 flyers out in the marketplace, but the return is there. And I'll tell you why I have the risk tolerance for this. It was actually this very, very simple message that Yellow Pages gave me when I started selling for them. They would always say, talk to the consumer about how much money they're spending and how many clients they would need in order to make that spend, at par. And so if you were selling a guy, $5,000 a month in advertising, and he was a roofer, it's one job, right? A roofer will make $5,000 on a job. So
Mhm.
your quarter page ad in the phone book, if you get one job out of it, that pays for your advertising. Every other job on top of that is gravy. And that's really how I looked at the the real estate market. Was I was like, okay, what's the spend for the bus spend? It's $100,000, and for us, we'll make approximately, after split, around $8,000 per sale. This is up in Canada. Average price point's $1 million. Now we're averaging around 2% in our marketplace, 4% total, 2 and 2. And so I go, okay, at $8,000, I need 15 sales in order to break even on that ad spend. But here's the thing that you can't quantify. On that ad spend, we're generating more team members because everyone's running to the team that's advertising.
Yes.
We're generating way better culture because there's unbelievable lead opportunity.
Yes.
We're creating agents that are coachable, and you actually have opportunities to coach them because you're putting them into the marketplace. You're not coaching them in an office. You're like, okay, let's go to this lead together. Okay, now go pick up that buyer lead and let's work it through together. So you're creating all these opportunities, and you can't actually substantiate that. You can't quantify all of that. You can look at, like, okay, we generated 153 listing appointments, and that means something. But all the extra things that we're benefited from, you can't quantify it. And so for me, especially in this marketplace where you have everybody that's pulling back and we're leaning in, it's a no-brainer. And so now I will just say this. You have to make sure that you have people that are good at what they do. And I'll tell you one thing that I knew about Steve and Ryan, and I'll give a shout out to Nick and Blake as well, because those guys are unbelievable warriors in the marketplace. But like, we actually have people that can convert, because you can go ahead and spend all that money and generate the lead opportunities, and then you don't have people that can convert. And so before you go ahead and spend the money, make sure that you have people that know how to convert and coach them up on how to convert. You need at least, I would say, on a big team, you need at least 6 like highly trained, very successful closers, conversion magnets. They get, basically everyone they meet wants to work with them. Just keep on putting opportunities in front of them. If you have those 6, then the remaining team members are just beneficiaries of all of the extra leads that come out of those top 6 producing agents. And we have more than 6, thankfully. We have a team of 53, and we've got phenomenal agents across the board. So we're very blessed that way. But don't do it if you're going to go spend $1 million and you got 2 agents that need to pick up the pieces. You're not set up for it yet.
No, you're not. And there was a timing aspect too, right? Just because, I mean, we got to see this from a branding perspective, and the timing of how everything kind of rolled out was perfect, because billboards hit, bus stops hit, then the investor stuff hit, and then the analytics I went right to, and I said, show me Tanner, show me the number of impressions. What happened as soon as this went up? Spiked off the charts. And I'm like, okay, yep. Because the flyers hit. So people start to look, and then they're searching. We know behavior, right? They're going to go right here. They're going to go to Instagram. They're going to go in, what is this? And then boom. And then, just now the amplification and eyeballs, it's pretty magical. And like you said, don't do that unless you have the next component, which is conversion. And so that's super important.
And for me, this is a good segue into where the market's going. So who can actually afford to do this? Because to your point, if we had just done a flyer blast, and the flyer blast goes out, nobody knows Benson Crew. I mean, the flyer says Benson Crew, but nobody knows who Benson Crew is. Does it have the same retention? Does it have the same conversion rate? Whereas we had 300 and plus, billboards, bus shelters, et cetera, all around their house. No, it doesn't, right? Did it matter that we had 3,300 5-star Google reviews? Yeah, of course it mattered. And so the thing is, and I think that's what's really difficult for the individual agent, is like, they're trying to compete against these bigger teams. And it's like, well, how do you do that? Like, how can you actually manage to get, the flyer campaign going, the Google ads going, the Google reviews up to where they need to be, all the different media production? You need overhead. You've got administrators, you've got marketing staff. Like, how can you actually do it? And even myself, as a very successful team in Canada, we had a team of 25 and we grew to 40, pushed back down to 25 in the harder markets. I looked at it and looked at the landscape and was like, in humility, I can't get to where we need to go unless I make this partnership with the other 2 groups. And they were humble enough themselves to see it. And so we amalgamated. And I think that's where our industry is headed. You and I have talked a lot about this offline, but I believe there's going to be a constant pressure on commissions. We are not going to 6% tomorrow. We're not going to 7% tomorrow. There's a constant pressure. I think in the US, I hear more 5% total than I do 6. In Canada, you hear more 4 than you do 5. And that's not going anywhere. Well, it is going somewhere. It's going to go down. And that's the unfortunate part. And then it's like, okay, AI is coming to our marketplace. It is making the job a little lighter in some areas and heavier in others. When I got into the game, social media didn't exist. And so I didn't have to go dancing on TikTok or create these unbelievable videos that were going to gain followers. I just took a picture, stuck it on a billboard and printed 500 of them. And it was done for the year. Now it's like, okay, you just made a really good reel. Wake up tomorrow and make another. Wake up the next day and make another. I mean, that's a full-time job in itself. So in some ways, the game has become a lot harder. In other ways, it's lightened the load. Look at the softwares that we're using in Canada. We have something called it's a showing booking software. And before we'd have to call the office, talk to the broker, book the appointment. Now it's just a click of a button, gets approved. So like it is making things easier, in some ways making things more difficult. And I think that if we see where the future is, which I think everyone agrees on this, there's going to be a constant pressure on commissions, right? Everyone agrees on that point. Okay. And the advertising game is becoming, I would say more expensive. That's just a simple way to say it. It's just more expensive. Yeah. If you're not your social media person, you need a social media person. You need an editor. You need a content creator, etc. So it's becoming more expensive. How do you do that? You amalgamate. And I think that the brokerages are seeing it. On the brokerage level, you're seeing the big guys swallow up the small guys. And I think on the teams, you're seeing a ton of teams amalgamating, rightly so. And then agents are super smart. So I love realtors. Agents are probably, in terms of street smarts, EQ, they're probably the best of any industry, and they can sense it. They know that like somebody's got to do the heavy lifting. Somebody's got to be, wearing 5 hats. I don't want to be the guy. I'll go join the person that's willing to do that. And sure, they'll take a split, but I don't have to do everything. And so we're actually getting a lot of top producers that in their own right are making 6 figures, high 6 figures, right? $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year on their own. And they go, yeah, but it's not sustainable. And if I can make that same money or more being on a team, like I'm in. And so that's where I think the industry is headed. And in our industry, the question is do you have the humility to concede on your name and your face? And that's the question, right? Like your name and your face aren't going to get loud anymore. You're building something together with somebody else. And you saw it with us. We went to an AI avatar. I think that's spot on personally. No agent wants to come and work for my face. No agent wants to come and work for my partner's face. But can we get behind an AI avatar that we threw into ChatGPT? What is a very likable, professional, high acumen agent look like from a worldly standpoint? Generate us an avatar that looks like that. Came out with a 35-year-old looking avatar that, looked super friendly that I would call. And we've rolled with that. And now we're making a female version of that avatar as well. So this is where the industry's headed. I think that it's an exciting time, but it is a scary time because all change is scary. But the question is, what is the right ship and am I on the right ship?
Yeah, no, you're so spot on. I mean, you and I talked about this, like, what Whistle's doing in San Diego, him and Beer aligning, but you got a lot of the smaller teams that are jumping on, right? Because just to your point, they can't afford to compete. But when we're together, then we can, exactly. We have more resources. We can have a bigger lift. I think what we'll see, Scott, is the bigger we'll get bigger. But then I think there'll still be room for those that have the local, shake that love to shake hands, kiss babies, that have some great support around them. They're making good money. They're using that money to reinvest into assets and building wealth. So I think you're going to see real small. I think the mid-sized teams, the dozen to 2 dozen, I think it's just going to get harder and harder and harder. So they're going to have to make a decision. Do I align and jump on board and form something bigger to kind of like what you guys did? Or do I, scale way back down, heavy on production, super leveraged, trying to print a lot of money, using that money to make money? I think that's kind of the direction. I don't think we'll see any of the middle of the road. But to your point, you did say something like, as an owner, where do you have to get to from an ego standpoint to then be humble enough to be like, hey, listen, I have bigger aspirations, but I can't do it with myself, but we can do it together. Like how, where's the emotional intelligence, but like what's the demeanor that has to be made up for that ego to get out of the way, to be able to be humble enough to make that decision?
Yeah, for me, it was, I'm saying it was easy, not because I don't have an ego. I obviously have an ego like all of us, but it was easy because the business in my mind was more important than, an individual sign with my face on it. And so I saw the industry for what it was. And I think that there's a runway for us right now. And if I'm being really, transparent, I would say, like, are my children going to get into this industry as realtors? I don't know about that. I mean, I don't know what that industry looks like 10, 15, 20 years from now. It looks very, very different than it does today. What I do know is that people will always need money, or whatever form of money we're using, whether it be crypto or otherwise, but like, people will always need access to money. And so for me, real estate is it's a great engine to create revenue. So it's a revenue generating business. And and I think it's a great revenue generating business. Like, if I was to look at all the businesses around, I mean, you look at restaurant owners, you look at, just your sort of tradespeople, et cetera. Like, I'd still pick real estate every day of the week. And then, okay, so that's my income generator. Now, what do I want to do with that income? And if, as realtors, if we're not thinking about that, we are going to completely miss the opportunity in front of us. And so, as a team and as partners with my guys that we've partnered with, and also with our agents, like, we're actually holding wealth building seminars. Not that we are the authority on the matter, but we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot in the last 20 years, and we want to share, and we want to hear what they have to share with us. Maybe they have opportunities we don't know about, but we want to learn, how do we actually invest the revenue that we're making into the foreseeable future? And that's what I'm really passionate about. And that's where I'm headed. So right now, it's like, I think multifamily is a great asset. I think that lending is always a great asset. I think that AI is a great asset. Lead gen, I think becoming lead gen magnets is a very, very good spend of dollars. And so we're just going to continually flush that out. But even, you can tell on our offline chats, like, the partners that I have, were just like everybody else in the industry, including myself, at a point. It's like, okay, we've made some money, we've made what we want, now let's spend the money, and let's make it again, and let's spend it. Whereas I want to say, well, hold on a minute, let's make the money, let's put away 25% and reinvest that outside of our specific business. Like, I don't want to invest all the money back into the real estate business. I want to invest the money into other ventures. And that, I think, is what every individual realtor, an agent on a team, everybody that's listening today, if you're not thinking about, like, how can I take some of this income, 25% if you want, less, and invest it into other vehicles. And I'll just end this topic on this point. I said to somebody, what if we could invest in an unbelievable business we knew was a home run, and we would make like 15, 20% over the next couple of years, annualized, and wouldn't we do it? And he's like, yeah, of course we would do it. And I'm like, okay, well, just take NVIDIA, for example. NVIDIA is obviously the leader in AI. And I go, I don't have any employees. I don't have anyone barking at me, giving me orders. It's completely liquid. I can sell it tomorrow if I want, but I can get in and invest, or put it this way, I could invest with Jeff Bezos. I could pick Jeff Bezos as my partner, Elon Musk as my partner, and just invest in their company, and they're doing all the heavy lifting. Like, that is the type of mentality, not to say that those aren't good investments, but what I am saying is that's the type of mentality that I approach business with, is like, I want to learn and grow everything that I'm making by pushing it out into other spheres other than just real estate.
Yeah, dude, I love that. And to me, that's the conversation that's been missing, is that you hear a lot of conversations on invest and build wealth. You hear, okay, this is what you need to do, lead generation, grow and build your business. But the conversation that's been missing is, how do you do one that will fuel and fund the other, right? That's the whole, like, your business is just a vehicle that should fuel and fund, the other investments, what you're talking about, to find your freedom. And I think, you're just in the perfect spot to be able to really push that conversation, as we need to be thinking about that, and letting ego aside, to where I can come in, I can, be a Steve, a Ryan, come together, because together we're better than just us trying to do on our own. And we can have a bigger footprint. We can have a bigger impact. We can create more opportunities.
Yeah,
I think
John, so this is what I love about you is like, I think that you're, one of your superpowers is like you bring brilliant minds together. They respect you. And so you're able to bring these people together. And then you're also able to humbly just step back and kind of watch things formulate. There's a real skill set in that. And what I love about this is that if as realtors, we can all push our egos aside just enough to go, look, I'm not going to tell you about what I'm doing that's making money because I want you to like give me your money. Like investing with just, into NVIDIA or any of these other companies doesn't make me any money. I'm sharing what's working for me because I'm so passionate and enthusiastic because like I've watched my bank account skyrocket in the last 3 months and it's unbelievable to me. That's where I think there's a real win here is like, let's get around people that have, and this is a Hormozi quote, but like basically, in order to really gain wealth, to generate wealth, you can't just be an investor. You have to have a revenue stream and you have to be investing. So all of us in real estate, we have our revenue stream. It's selling houses, but we have to use the revenue stream as our investment strategy. And like you said, is most people use that revenue stream to invest back in their own business, which is fine. But to me, this is a marketplace where it's like, yes, invest in your own business, but also look outside of your business to diversify. It's crucial in this time frame, I'd say.
Yeah, I might have cut that clip with Hormozi too, as he was with what's his name out of New York. I think he was on his show. The head asked him about it, right? Hey, we have the media company, we have the brokerage, we have all of this, and he's like, listen, the brokerage is only, it has a set margin, but it's also fueling opportunities that's going to feed the other endeavors. And I think the agents that I see that are growing exponentially and really putting themselves in the best position to survive whatever the market does are the ones that, to your point, this is what we talk about all the time is, Hormozi 101, customer acquisition cost, right? And understanding what the customer acquisition cost, cash conversion cycle, gross profit, being able to then, I have this opportunity, where else do I want to go with it? And it's always been a pet peeve of mine that, especially real estate agents are most notorious for it, is that most of the time they have a lot of sweat equity and effort, and they do this to acquire a customer, then they just hand it over to somebody else that's going to make money off of it without getting anything in return. Totally. Right? Like that's just like, it's one of the biggest pet peeves that I have. And I'm like, dude, like, because they don't understand the math. That's the reason why they do that. And it's like, listen, you realize, and they're like, well, I didn't have to pay anything for it. Yeah, you did. You paid 41% to Zillow on a referral fee. You had a $10,000 commission. You got $5,900. What you're seeing is that, I made $5,900. No, you didn't. You gave $4,100 of your $10,000 away. Oh, and then by the way, then I just kick it over here to my mortgage buddy that didn't pay me anything in return for it. So it's just kind of a pet peeve. And I think it's just not being educated on the math is the biggest thing. And like when I'm hearing from you, what I love is like, you get the math, and it's because you are obsessed with the math because you see how the math can compound.
Yeah. And the old adage, right? The path is the math, or the math is the path. And I think that, and I wouldn't even say from a spreadsheet, I lean on Steve for that in looking at the actual numbers. But what I have realized is that if all we're doing is running on the treadmill to pay the bills and then running on the treadmill again to pay the bills, and you even alluded to it, just 5 minutes ago, where you were saying like, we can all sense what's on the radar. And I think that you and I are transparent enough to say, we all know that we're in a rocky economy, right? Mm-hmm. Every agent, we've got that high EQ, we've got that touch and feel. We can sense it. We know this is not a booming market. We have this sense that like it could get worse before it gets better. I think that's probably the way that I feel about things. And so it's like, okay, well then why not now? Like now is the right time to figure out, what am I going to do with this income? How am I going to send it out into like, what about asking ChatGPT today? Like if this is the one thing you get out of the podcast, like when there is a bearish real estate economy, what are great bets? Like what are good industries to put it into? Do I short a REIT? Do I get into mortgage lending? Because when the economies are soft, people need money. So to me, that's kind of a no-brainer. But like, what are the other areas to look into? Obviously, defensive stocks are strong right now. So you got like healthcare and food. We're always going to need food. So like those economies are gonna do well in a downward pressure economy. I think we're a little bit softer in Canada than you guys are in the US. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to see some more pain in Canada's economy than you guys will down. So everyone I talk to in the US says, Scott, man, keep that negativity away from me. You guys are up in Canada. We're nothing like you, man. I'm like, okay, fair enough. All my American friends, I apologize. I know you're not feeling what we're feeling, but it is there's something in the air, if you will, right?
Yeah, there really is, and there's, I think things are moving so fast. I think that's things that's making things pretty a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and I think that that might be the thing, Scott. As more I kind of sit back and think about it and just watch human behavior, because you're fantastic with picking up on human behavior as well, and I think there's just such a lack of certainty. There's so much uncertainty right now that people are. I I've never experienced in 20 plus years more people paralyzed than anything else,
Mhm.
right? And I come back to the human behaviors, and I think there's just a tremendous amount of uncertainty right now. And you see the leaders that have the high EQ, that have, to where they have the mindset of understanding what's within my control, what's not within my control. And like you said, those that are leaning in are like accelerating while everybody else is back here trying to figure out some certainty.
Yeah, and I think that the people that are leaning in, they know that this doesn't last forever. So this kind of
Mhm.
paralysis that a lot of people are in, and I feel it too. Like, yeah, we're moving fast and we're spending money and we're growing and putting big amalgamations together, and so that's exciting and we're moving the needle. But like, I feel the fear, if you will, or that paralyzed state of like, oh wow, like it seems like whatever direction I go in, there's not a gravy train. I mean, there's no gravy train right now. But what I
Right.
do know is that we're setting ourselves up for when it shifts, because it will. The economy will shift, and in Canada, the real estate market will improve. It's probably got another year of hardship, I would say, but it will improve. Who's set up for long-term growth? Who's set up for long-term success? Like our team, we are set up, and
Oh,
you'll hear a lot of top top team leaders right now. They'll say like, basically, you just got to make it through. Like you
mhm.
essentially have to make it through this hard time, because when you come through the other side, the industry is going to have basically less agents. There's going to be less people that stayed in the business, and your market share is going to have grown. And that I know to be true. And oftentimes I'll hear a great teacher of mine say, "You have to stick what you feel underneath what you know." Because if you're
Mm,
resting on the way you feel and you're letting your emotions dictate everything, you're going to make all kinds of bad decisions. But if you put
yeah,
the way you feel under what you know, like I know that the real estate economy will get better. Things go up and down. Right now we're in a down market. It will get up. Okay, well that's what I know for sure. So now I'm going to stick the way that I feel underneath the fact that I know it will get better. So just do the right thing, make some good choices right now, and it will improve. And there's things that are out of our control. One of my favorite lines that we've shared with you is, you're either what? You're either in control, and if you're not in control, what are you? You're out of control. Those are your two choices. And we
yeah,
hate to be out of control. But what can we actually control? Because there's things we can control. I can control how many hours I put into the day, real estate wise. I can control how many phone calls I make. I can control how many recruiting calls I make. I can control how many coaching calls I made. What I can't control is what our government does, what the interest rates do, what that seller decides to do with their house. Are they going to do their price correction? Are they not? But I focus on what I can control, and then just minute by minute, day by day, I try to make good decisions, and eventually that creates a month, it creates a year, and we're out of this jam. And the markets go up, and who's succeeding? It's the people that stayed diligent. And so you can put me in that camp every day. Every day I wake up, it's like, okay, let's just be diligent, make the right choices we can, and the things that are out of our control, they're out of our control.
yeah. That's so good. There's a couple. Yeah, I have to let Carson know you got some swag shirts right there. In control versus out of control, and put feel over under what I know. So
Yeah, yeah,
there's some
man.
good swag
Yeah,
right there.
yeah, yeah. Never my own, right? Everything we say. This is what I love about our industry is like we take these little tidbits somewhere along the way. I can't tell you where I got those from, but like somewhere along the way you hear it and you're like, no, that's something that sticks for me, and I'm
Yeah.
going to use it. And there's so many brilliant people in our industry. I actually think that there's salespeople and then there's realtors. Realtors are cut above. Like we are so much better than just your average salespeople.
Mhm.
Very, very professional. And anyway, I love our industry. I love our people, and I'm rooting for us, because I think that right now there's some pressures against us. And I think we're going to see some really big change. But I think those that are leaning in, you have to lean into your business. They will succeed. They will thrive.
So spot on. Brother, I appreciate you jumping in here. Definitely you are a leader amongst leaders, especially in this industry. And I love the message. I love the direction. And like I said, I appreciate you carving out the time, jumping in here. And guys listening in, man, make sure you guys are plugged in, paying attention to what Scott's up to and definitely what Benson Crew's up to. I'm excited to see, being a part of the journey, seeing it all come together. And, I see it. And it's just a matter of time before everybody else does. It's really cool.
Yeah, man. We got the best coach in the business. Thanks, Johnny.
Awesome, brother. I appreciate you. Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
All right. See ya.